He sold his company for $28 million and walked away knowing exactly what he was going to keep. Every dollar accounted for. No surprises, no regrets. He had done the work before he got to the table. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what he did and what you need to do if you're working towards an exit. The founders keep the most from their deal. They're not luckier. They're not better negotiators. They just understand one thing most founders don't. The amount of taxes you're going to pay is decided before the deal closes, not after. Between federal taxes, state taxes, advisory fees, and deal structure, that $28 million can dwindle quickly. I've worked with entrepreneurs in this exact situation. And today, I'm going to pull back the curtain so when you go through your exit, you're going to know exactly what moves to make. Here's what we're going to cover. How capital gains work for entrepreneurs going through a business sale. How state taxes can dramatically affect what you're actually going to take home in your pocket. The deal structure could be saving you millions or costing you millions, and exactly what entrepreneurs do to make sure they walk away with the maximum value from their business exit. The difference between doing this right and wrong, it's not small. It's millions of dollars. Let's dive into it. The entrepreneurs who keep the most from their business sale are the ones that understand how federal capital gains taxes work. That $28 million sale number, it's not what you're going to keep. It's not what's going to be in your pocket. Here's how it works. That $28 million is going to dwindle quickly, but how quickly? Well, when we look at a business transaction, capital gains taxes is what you need to understand. And this is going to be a different tax than what you've been used to for the entire length of growing and owning your business. When you've been growing and owning your business, you've been paying what's called ordinary income rates. In the ordinary income brackets, you're going to pay somewhere between 10% all the way up to 37%. If you look over here, you can see these brackets. As you can see, the top bracket is 37%. 37%. You know what that is on $28 million? It's over $10 million. So if you were taxed at ordinary income rates, your $28 million dwindles all the way down to $18 million. And to be exact, that $28 million is going to dwindle down by $10,036,000. You heard me right. Over $10 million in taxes if you're taxed at ordinary income rates. That's the bad news. The good news is if you structure your deal properly, it should be taxed as capital gains. And when we look at capital gains tax brackets right here, you can see they range from 0% all the way up to 20%. In this case, your $28 million is going to be reduced by 20% instead of 37%. So still a big hit, but dramatically less. On $28 million, we're talking about $5.6 million in taxes for capital gains. Roughly half of what you would pay if that was ordinary income, as if you made it in the business. Now, there's one other federal tax that you need to be aware of that's not capital gains, and a lot of people miss this. It's called net investment income tax. It's a tax that gets tacked on to large transactions when they are taxed at capital gains rates. That tax, 3.8%. So roughly another $1 million that you're going to have to pay in taxes through the business transaction. Let's bring that all together and lay it out for you. $28 million transaction, you're gonna pay roughly $5.6 million in capital gains taxes. You're gonna pay roughly $1,064,000 in net investment income tax. And that's gonna leave us our grand total right here, $21,336,000. Still a ton of money. How great is that? Now, what you might be thinking is 28 million sounds a lot better than 21 million. Well, I got some more good news and some more bad news. That's not where the taxes stop. Taxes continue at the state level. Most entrepreneurs know, and if you don't, you should, where you live is going to make a huge difference in what you keep after your business transaction. If you're located in the state of Texas, you're not going to pay any state income tax. If you're located in California, you're going to pay upwards of 13.3%. The good news is, if you're in one of those low income tax states, that's going to continue throughout your business sale. You're going to pay little to no taxes. Bad news is, if you're in one of those high income tax states, you're going to continue paying at those higher levels. So as a business owner, what are things that you should be thinking about on the state income tax side? Well, if we're selling for $28 million, we're talking about real money that you could be paying in taxes. Your state's upwards of 10%, we're talking about $2.8 million. That's $2.8 million that you could be keeping in your pocket. The key aspect you need to be thinking about is, where is your business actually domiciled? Because that is typically where the taxes are going to be paid. Let's look at an example here. Let's say that you live in the state of Texas, which is a 0% income tax state, but your business fully operates out of the state of California. If that business goes through a transaction they're going to want to collect their 13.3% on your $28 million business transaction, even though you live in the state of Texas. So as you think about a business transaction, you need to make sure you're being mindful of not only where you're a resident of, but where the business actually operates. Because again, this could be the difference in millions of dollars staying in your pocket. The other aspect to be really mindful of is you cannot just simply pluck your company out of the state of California and pluck it into the state of Texas 30 days before you go to sell. Planning in advance is going to be the key to make sure that that state you pulled that income from, for example, in the state of California, is not happening immediately before the sale. You should be thinking about this 12, 24 months in advance so you're not in a position that the state of California or other states that have high income tax are going to be coming after you. As we put a bow on state income taxes, what is the real dollar difference in planning versus not planning? It's upwards of that 13.3%, but we don't like to talk in terms of percentages. We want to talk in terms of dollars. So on a $28 million transaction, we're talking about $3,724,000. $3,724,000 that could be in your pocket as opposed to the government's pocket. So make sure you're planning around state taxes well in advance of a transaction. To give you context on what we've just talked about, we're talking about roughly $9 to $10 million in taxes if you go through a transaction with $28 million. The crazy part is that's not the number one thing you should be thinking about. The number one thing you should be thinking about is the deal structure. When I think about entrepreneurs often overlook the deal structure when they're going through a business transaction, whether it's an earnout, asset sale, stock sale, advisory fees. Understanding the elements of your deal is going to be a large determining factor on what keeps money in your pocket. Now, what do I mean? You're going to have an attorney, you're going to sign on the dotted line, and there's going to be hundreds of pages that you're going to have to sign. But when you go through this process, you need to be educated around the basics. Let's start with the difference between an asset sale and a stock sale. Generally speaking, if you are the seller of the business, a stock sale is going to be better for you. Almost all of the proceeds are going to get allocated as capital gains taxes, and you're going to be on your way. It's going to be a very clean transaction. Now, the buyer might not want to do this because they're going to assume all the liability of that stock. Any liability that you've generated over the course of the last 10, 20 years running your business, they are going to have to now take on. So a lot of times the buyer is going to want an asset sale, but typically an asset sale is something that gets more complicated and something that could cost you more money in taxes and the deal structure as a whole. Let's look into that. From an asset sale perspective, how does that actually happen? When you go to sell all the assets of the company, you have to decide what the allocation is, the dollar amount is for all the different assets. And I'm just going to read you off some of the examples that you're going to be seeing if you go through an asset sale. What are the things that we are going to have to decide on the value of? We're going to have to decide on the value of accounts receivable, inventory, depreciation recapture, equipment, non-compete clauses, consulting agreements, goodwill. And when I think about those, each one of those is going to have a different tax consequence. So let's look at the ones that I just read off. Your accounts receivable is going to get taxed as ordinary income. Your inventory is also going to get taxed as ordinary income. Depreciation recapture, also ordinary income. And remember that ordinary income is 37% versus 20%. Our equipment we sell, we're going to recapture a portion as ordinary income because we likely have depreciated it. Non-compete agreements, ordinary income. Consulting agreements, ordinary income. You're probably thinking, Luke, this asset sale sounds terrible for me. I got to pay 37% instead of 20%. Well, the good news is this last piece of the deal, which is goodwill. And that's going to get taxed at capital gains tax rates. When we look at the businesses that typically sell as asset sales, the large majority needs to be pushed towards goodwill. So if you think about the price of your business, what you need to be thinking about as a deal structure is if we're going to go through an asset sale, we need to push as much of the sale price as possible towards goodwill. And the good news about this is typically the buyer of the business is not going to have a strong opinion on how the allocation is set up, because from a transaction perspective, he's still going to be paying the same price. You're just going to be paying a very different amount from a tax perspective. As you think about the deal structure, make sure you're understanding stock versus asset sale, and how it could be affecting you from a tax perspective. You're probably listening to this thinking, this sounds really complicated. How do I make sure I do this right? This is making sure that you have the right advisors on your team. When we think about the advisors that are going to be on your team, the two main professionals are going to be an investment banker and an M&A attorney. They're going to be really expensive. Typically, investment bankers are going to charge a percentage of the sale of the business. This can range all the way from 1% all the way up to 10%. Mainly is going to depend on the size of the transaction. The bigger the transaction, the smaller the percentage. Smaller the transaction, the bigger the percentage. It's going to be really expensive. The right investment banker is worth it. You should pay them because they are going to be the ones that make sure that the deal is set up in a way that you get the maximum amount of value in your pocket. In an M&A attorney, don't use ChatGPT. Now is not the time to be cheap. This is likely the largest amount of money you're ever going to receive in your life. Now is not the time to go cheap and try to save a couple $1,000. Find an M&A attorney who has actually gone through this process dozens, if not hundreds of times. They are going to be worth their weight in gold if you do this right. And that leads me to what most smart entrepreneurs do 12 to 24 months before they go through the sale process. And I'm going to walk you through this step by step, and I'm going to keep it really simple, high level. So stick with me. Number one, what do I need from this business transaction for it to change my life forever? Most people, when they go through a business transaction, they see the number on the page and they think, wow, that's a lot of money. That could change my life. But can it really change my life? I just had an entrepreneur come to me who was selling their business for roughly $20 million. And when they went through the transaction, they were telling me, this is going to be amazing. We're going to get 20 million bucks. Here's how it's going to change my life. What they didn't realize is that the amount of money that they were actually spending on an annual basis could not be supported by this transaction. They needed to sell the business for closer to $30 to $40 million. Luckily, we had a conversation with them first and stopped them from going through the transaction process and encouraged them to continue growing the business prior to exiting it. So that's number one. Make sure that you understand what it costs to be you and that this business transaction is actually going to change your financial life. The second piece is going to be making sure that you have the right deal team in place. Like I just said a minute ago, the right investment banker, the right M&A attorney, they're going to be worth their weight in gold. Do not go responding to unsolicited emails from people trying to buy your business without having the right team in place. I can all but guarantee you are going to get taken advantage of if you're a first-time founder and you go through this process without the help of experts. Those two simple steps could save you millions of dollars. So that founder that we talked about at the beginning of this video, the one that sold for roughly $28 million, what did he walk away with? He walked away with a life-changing amount of money that is going to allow him to never have to work ever again. Before he signed on the dotted line, he walked away with clarity and confidence, knowing exactly what was going to happen post-transaction. And most importantly, he walked away knowing he was going to spend the rest of his life doing something that he loved. And that was going to be working part-time in the business, but also spending a significant amount of time with his family, something that he had put to the side over the course of building his business. So if you're an entrepreneur today and you're thinking, what is my next step in this process? Well, what I encourage you to do is schedule a call with us at Moen Private Wealth. We can walk you through all these steps, helping you to decide who should be on your financial team, who are the investment bankers you should talk to, the M&A attorneys, and walk you through this entire process so you get maximum amount of value in your business and you're educated along the way. If you enjoyed this video and you want to be learning more content about entrepreneurs going through the process of selling their business, hit the subscribe button. We're going to be putting out more and more content just like this.